Okay, excellent. Welcome everyone to the AI Revenue Summit and good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to be able to welcome you today to today's fireside chat with Liz Dailing, a visionary in product marketing and strategy. As a VP of product and marketing and strategy at Outreach, Liz drives innovation and success. With over 2 decades of leadership experience, she has transformed teams and driven growth across multiple organizations. Today, she'll be sharing her insights on how one of the most transformative forces of our time, artificial intelligence, has and can work within our industry. Please join me in welcoming Liz Dailing. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. We're very excited to have you. So, Liz, as we jump into this, we have several topics and questions to cover. So, without further delay, let me ask you, as a leader in product marketing, how do you feel like AI has changed your approach?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like while AI continues to be the buzzword that we all hear and need to incorporate and need to pay attention to, the foundational, those critical elements in product marketing remain the same. So if you take a step back from the technology that empowers, what we do, it really still is about identifying the customer pains and solving those issues with technology, which of course include AI. So let's be honest, you can throw tech at anything, but if it doesn't truly remove a pain or accelerate a gain for real people, it's going to be short-lived. So I continually push my team, probably the same way I have over the past handful of years, to dig into the jobs that customers have to do and what pains and gains they have associated with doing those jobs to make sure that we're solving the problems that are the biggest barriers, right, for adoption, whether it's across sales or RevOps or whatever those teams we serve are. In doing that, I believe that we get to the real impact that we can have and the value that we can deliver across those sales and revenue organizations that we serve. So that being said, I'm constantly looking for ways that AI can accelerate pipeline to make those more efficient workflows, deliver more impactful signals to the teams that use Outreach every day. And really, it's about finding those right moments and right activities that's going to drive the business forward. So as long as the problems that we solve, regardless of technology, are trying to solve those real pains, and AI just isn't looked at as a bolt-on, luckily for me at Outreach, it's really been a foundational part of the platform for a long time. In fact, it's part of the reason that I joined when we brought Kaya to market. So a lot of goodness there from a product marketing perspective. I see it as an accelerator, but as long as that accelerator is connected to what we do in the first place, the right identification.
Right, right. And I love that you're making this distinction that we're still marketing and selling to people, and we use that AI as a part of the process and that accelerator. So I love those points that you're making there. Now, let me ask you, how can AI help align marketing and sales teams to be more effective?
So it's actually related to what we just discussed. Recently, our own marketing team did some digging into what channels and what messages were most effective for the personas you serve. Now, shouldn't be a great surprise or any sort of shock, but let's just say when we're targeting admins, the messages that we send in platform are much more performant. When we're talking to execs, it's all about kind of those a la carte interactions or those one-on-ones or the account-based marketing approaches that we're taking. It's not much different on the sales side, right? It's still understanding who you're talking to and what your goal of that conversation is. So the thing I think that's a warning on both sides is that the more messages that we send out to our prospects and customers that don't resonate, the less trust that they have. And again, it's not different with sales. It remains the same. That targeting and understanding the needs and the pains of an organization and how those relate to the people of influence in an account is just critical. I think everybody's doing their own research. Customers are being inundated with similar messages from a lot of different vendors. But the problem that AI starts to solve for us is that humans can only scale so far. So when you think about where we're going to max out at that customization and max out at the precision of the conversations we're having with each individual in an account or at a customer, It basically takes me back to the fact that account planning and research takes time. Persona-driven messaging takes time. Understanding the similarities and differences between accounts and opportunities takes research and time. So this is where AI can start to identify those signals and the impacts across the entire sales cycle that processes based on a vast amount of data versus the set amount of data that, say, humans could process. So AI in this case starts to be able to show us through that contextual understanding what's working and what's not. So it's a huge lift. Marketing can then use those insights to understand if the sequences and the customer comms that they're running are playing off, and be advised on what steps are necessary to get to the most performant of those. So if you think about the fact of, like, even a couple of years ago, you would run a whole marketing campaign, and at the end, you would determine whether that was proven successful or not. Similarly with sales, you would run an entire sales cycle and you either won or lost. I feel like AI gives us that granularity at each of those steps in the process and can flag signals that, as sellers or as marketers, nobody had access to before. And so it can bring to light a whole new level of detail and understanding to make sure that we can harness the opportunities in the best way possible and take the right steps along the way.
Yeah, I love that. Now, you're making me think a little bit here about you're mentioning identifying those signals and implementing AI in the right way to be able to capture the pain points and use it to accelerate the effectiveness of the teams. Are there particular, if a business owner or another executive saying, "Hey, I'd like to do that, Liz,"
Yep.
where do they go to kind of start dipping their toes in the water a little bit and getting people onboarded with this new orientation or landscape of incorporating AI?
What we've ended up doing with a lot of our customers and a lot of our prospects, because we get this question every day, like, what is AI for sales? Help. Tell me what,
Yeah,
where do I
yeah,
implement it? What do I do with it? And one of the things that
right.
we've started doing are kind of workflow assessments. So what's your current sales process look like today? For example, for account and deal management or for retention and expansion activities, and really getting down into the details of some of those processes. What ends up happening there is then some gaps kind of reveal themselves almost immediately to say, whoa, this is where things aren't converting the way they should, or this is where we've got not enough people to build the volume that we need of activities to do. And so within that gap identification, then start to look for solutions that can mitigate some of that. So I think about things like a lot of marketers are running either sequences or cadences or campaigns that have set steps and set content. One of the things we've done in our platform, and I'm sure there are other alternatives out there, is doing that workflow assessment. We were able to identify, sequences running an outreach. Our customers want to look at those side by side. They want to see what's the most performant and how do I replicate that, even if they're for different lines of business or different account and selling teams. So what we've ended up doing is creating things like sequence engagement score that brings AI to light and telling you the exact steps in the sequence, the places that are working well, and the places that people are exiting those sequences. So where do you see the most people drop off? Where does the sequence stop and deals don't progress, as a part of that engagement? Similarly, with opportunities from a seller perspective, we do that with what we call a deal health score. Similar in concept, right? We're taking all of the signals from emails and meetings and different calls, everything that we can access at the front end of a deal, and using AI with the context and understanding of deals of a similar size and stage, prompting sellers in their system of action to say, hey, you haven't had a meeting with this opportunity in X days, that's putting it at risk. And kind of scoring those modules so that we can not only prompt with you haven't reached the fixed, like it should only be in a deal cycle for 20 days. Now it's 30. Now it escalates to your manager. Actually getting into the precision of what indicators that those reps do have access to that can then prompt them to take the next step in the process and make sure that that deal is successful. So those are a couple examples, but it really does start with that workflow analysis.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, one of my big takeaways from what you're saying there, along with that workflow analysis, is that you're using the AI to, as you said, get a score, identify some behavior signals,
Hmm.
some of the workflows and sequences. And so you're really looking for that prescription of saying, hey, AI kind of help me identify some of these areas of where we can optimize, where we can be more efficient.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, wonderful insight there. Now as we're kind of going through, it seems like we're going through these stages here, building this process. Then how do we use AI, and what role does it play into our pipeline management?
So in pipeline management, I think there are a few different places that AI hits pretty strongly. Number one, let's just say economies of late have not been friendly to, say, conversion of opportunities, and everybody's felt
Hmm.
more pressure to get more pipeline. Now, simultaneously, there's been a lot of talk about the role of the SDR disappearing or the BDR disappearing, but it hasn't happened. We actually ran a research study recently that showed that a lot of our accounts are still maintaining a subset of their SDRs and BDRs, but the problem is that volume needs to exponentially increase in pipeline generation, right? If we're seeing deal cycles that last a lot longer and deal cycles are extending, that we get to a conversion, but it's over a much longer period of time. So that being said, I would say that pipeline feed. So I talked about earlier how we had, taken a look at the different personas that we serve and the messages that need to resonate with them. There's a perfect example of you feed AI the right signals and the right set of data on prospects. You can start with that automation of a lot of those engagements because AI can deliver that precision that you're looking for. And then, depending on where an organization is comfortable, that can be fully automated. We can go autopilot mode, or we can go assist mode and say, get you to a certain point in the process and then hand off to SDRs, who then hand off to AEs. So there are a few different places. So that initial kind of top of funnel pipeline is place one, because there you're looking at activities, calls, meetings, emails, all of the things that feed the
Hmm.
pipe up top. I would say the next place is what we talked about in that middle of funnel and sort of the deal acceleration category. Things like deal health that I just talked about really are indicators that, for example, when I was an enterprise AE, we had no visibility into. Truly, I
Hmm.
didn't know if I was on track based on, the thousands of other deals that pre-existed kind of coming into my space. No clue. So I was going on my gut. I was going on what my customer was telling me, the close plan that I had in front of me, but I didn't have a system kind of analyzing all that data and presenting it to me in a consumable fashion as I was moving through the process. So I think that deal velocity is sort of your next moat where AI can really
Hmm.
drive a lot of activity. And then finally, it's not just in that initial opportunity, it's in all of the retention and expansion activities that happen once you get that customer. So I think what we've typically talked about is kind of the post sale or the next kind of continuous customer engagement, looking at, what a customer's usage is and how engaged they've been with you, and what if that usage drops off, and what if you see other customers that have that happen. Looking into those expansion motions and those retention motions as a similar approach with I think can be incredibly valuable for a lot of companies. And it's a process that we've sort of relegated to a different cycle. But with the
Hmm.
use of AI, it's still the signals, the people, and the timing that are going to drive it forward.
Yeah. That's very interesting. And you kind of hit all those points of the funnel, top, mid, and bottom of funnel there. And then you have that retention purpose. And that is that cycle, similar cycle that you just outlined there,
Mhm.
and using that AI effectively to help, especially during this time, we're trying to fill pipe. How much more important now is it to retain and focus on how we can do those upsells, how we can keep the retention high?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, excellent. So tell me, where does AI shine in sales that most people wouldn't think about?
Yeah, I have, and let me be clear. This may be my own personal bias, but I actually see it resonate with pretty much everybody I talk to. So I'll add that qualifier in there.
Okay.
The place where AI shines is in a lot of the live interactivity of AI. so that in the moment, whether it's objection handling or whether it's content presented to sellers in the moment that they need it, the ability to surface insights actually real time and live as things are happening, to me is the most pivotal, like honestly life altering aspect for sellers. And I would say not only sellers, but then leaders as they coach their sellers, and then also peripheral teams to sales like enablement and marketing. They can make sure that it's not, referring back to an enablement session that a seller took, 3 months ago, and hopefully they remember the message and they remember the content and all of the details, but actually in the moment. So when you look at things like conversation intelligence and actually incorporating things like live AI into that, where again, you're relying on AI for a contextual understanding of the conversation, but it's surfacing all of the capabilities that are coming up in the conversation in the form of content cards or action items or things like that, that are then summarized, wrapped up neatly at the end of it, and your deal moves to next. So I think that in the moment piece of it is pretty underestimated at this point, and really does shine pretty brightly.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting you mentioned that. In going through some recent research studies from McKinsey and Company, they brought up the importance of using AI where it shines right now, which is in that summarization and identification, and then finally interpretation of the data and behaviors. And that with so many other usage possibilities, that was the one that really was pointed out, saying, "Hey, this is where the most impact could be made with a low amount of risk or investment involved." So I really resonate with what you're sharing here. So then let's pivot a little bit into the importance of having an AI centric product in the market right now. How important is that?
Well, I mean, I think it's just critical. Let's be honest. I don't think there's any way around it at this point in time. It is what our customers are asking for day to day. It is what the market is demanding day to day. And if you don't have a solution for it, or if your organization hasn't figured out where and when the right adoption of some AI tech is, your competitors will. And they'll have taken advantage of it before you've even had that moment to step into it. So one of the things that has been nice, like I mentioned earlier at Outreach, is we've really infused that into our offerings from the beginning. So it's something that requires, I always think of it as like a house plant. It's that care and feeding, maybe with a lot more data inputs than a house plant requires, but it's getting it the information that it needs. And the more you feed it, the more you learn from it, the more data that exists in it, the smarter and better it is at performing and predicting kind of where risks are, where gaps are, and then putting you in a position as an organization to mitigate those risks, close the gaps, and really drive your business forward in a much more scalable way. Because again, like we talked about at the beginning, this is about scalability, where human kind of limitations of scale run out. Where can AI accelerate? And if you're just starting to fringe on that innovation now, it's going to be a pretty steep learning curve. If there is some AI embedded and your organizations are already talking about it and thinking about it and implementing, perfect. And I think the caution there is, though, don't just bolt it on, like I said at the beginning, but have it embedded as part of a process where it actually does deliver meaningful value and produce the results that your organization is intending. So whether it's through one of those workshops or whether it's through simply reviewing kind of where some gaps exist or some risk exists in your organization, and then searching for solutions to map to it, it really is kind of that, even in the revenue projection side of things, adding significant value, because it's giving your leaders, your CROs, your sellers, your marketing teams something to react to, instead of, as we've done historically, just sort of going with gut and what we think has worked in the past.
Yes, excellent. Well, Thank you so much, Liz. As we're wrapping up, and not to put you on the spot, but you've shared a lot of great information. You have a very diverse and unique background. Is there any final words or insights that you would like to share with our audience today? Whether that's tips on implementing AI products, evaluating it, or perhaps from a leadership perspective of making sure that they're on the right track with how they're viewing AI and implementing it.
I would say there are a few things that I would encourage everyone to do. Open up the conversation with some of your existing vendors to see where they're going with it. Push them for their vision and how they see it adopting into their current platform. And don't get overwhelmed by the fact that you have to have a complete and total answer to AI right now. Break it down into where it's going to actually impact your business and understand that you can implement it with a lot of solutions out there pretty quickly and start to see if that benefit has a positive impact and the impact that you intended on your org. So definitely engage with those vendors, look at the selling platforms that you have in place, and make sure that you have the right signal-based selling data points that you need embedded in the same system of action in which your sellers are working. I think one of the things that I would caution is that we don't over widget the solution, because then it puts our sellers back in a place of, the swivel chair, going from one thing to another thing to another thing. And then in fact, you haven't leveraged the advantage of AI. You've actually just overcomplicated and kept everything at a single, kind of input
Mhm.
level. So I would say talk to existing vendors, dig into your workflows, and start engaging with the companies that are out there and that have been doing it for a while. Because for a lot of organizations, it may not be the full Gen AI, as that kind of burst onto the scene last year, but it could be a lot of things like natural language processing or LLMs that they've been using, contextual understanding, machine learning. There are lots of those capabilities that are pretty deeply embedded in a lot of the selling platforms today.
Wow, that's excellent. Thank you again, Liz. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights and expertise on AI and how it impacts and what impacts it has on sales and marketing and business and strategy. Your perspectives giving us a lot to all think about as we navigate this rapidly evolving landscape. So thank you once again, and thank you to all of you for joining us for this session at the AI Revenue Summit. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Pete.
Bye bye.